Hi. It's been a while. So the reason I'm coming on after such a long time, well, actually, that's a long story. The reason I'm coming on today is because I want to talk about the feeling of not fitting in. Um, I think it's pervasive. I don't think it's just you, and it's not just me, and it's not just for a time period in our lives, but it's the result of a few things. One is a conditioning program that we have all been indoctrinated into from birth, that we need to fit in, we need to be included, we need to be accepted, we need to be like others, we need to be loved by others, we need to be understood by others, we need to do things like others do. And if we do anything that's different from that, and that's, I call it unique and divinely intentional, but what others may have labeled strange or awkward or weird or wrong, is because we're not supposed to fit in. I think most of us know this by now. At least if you're watching this video, you know this. But the awareness comes in layers. It's because the programming is so deeply embedded into our bodies, our emotions, our minds, our paradigms, our belief systems, our behaviors, our ancestry, that even if we have the awareness, to begin to act on that awareness and step out of the patterns and the habits of being and doing the way we've always been, that's another matter. We can realize it, right? We can have the awareness, but to actually put that awareness into action, to begin to change the way you respond and change the way you show up and change the way you appear and change the way you be, is another step. And it's the most important step, but it's hard. I was in yoga class this morning, and I go to a couple different areas for yoga, and they each have their own different, kind of environment and nuances and culture, if you want to call it. And, since I was a child, like maybe many of you, I've had an intuitive sense, a deep awareness that I feel and hear and see the differences in people, the thoughts that are going on in people's heads, the emotions that are going through people's bodies, the feelings that they're feeling. And so right away, when you walk into a space or in a room, unless you've muted this or minimized your ability to do this, you feel it right away. You notice. In fact, I was having a conversation with a good friend the other day, and, I said, when you walk into a space or a room or a group of people or a conversation, when it feels icky. And I use that word icky because it's the simplest, most pure, easy, identifiable word that describes when something doesn't feel good to you. But we don't listen to that something felt icky, and respond to it. We try, we force, we push, we press, we compress, we mold ourselves, we talk ourselves into, not paying attention to that feeling. And, pushing through it and ignoring it and saying that it's not true and it's not important. And what's really important is that, we use our inner strength and our, inner conviction, and, just like you're physically exercising, we just like push our way through it. And we be there because we need to be, and we don't pay attention to that other stuff because that's not important. That's a sign of weakness. That's a sign of weirdness. But it's actually the opposite. We need to pay attention to that icky feeling. And here's why. Because when we continually force ourselves, push ourselves, convince ourselves, try, mold ourselves, create space for others to be who they are while we're feeling uncomfortable, but we're still trying to be there. We're still trying to fit in. What we're doing is we're taking ourselves from this frequency of authenticity that our being truly is, and we push ourselves down like an elevator. I mean, I don't want to sound like this is a higher and lower kind of aspect, because that's not really what it is at all. Let's liken it to, going to school. When you're in sixth grade, you're not going to go down and hang out with second graders because you're not there anymore. You're just, it's boring. It's not stimulating. It's not alive. It doesn't resonate with you. Why should we force ourselves as a sixth grader to go down and play with and talk with and hang with and try to be like a second grader? So there's the analogy that feels better than higher and lower. You know what I mean? So we take this state of our awareness, of our evolution, of our expansiveness, of our frequency and vibration, and we push it down. And what happens when we push it down, that we try to ignore, is we start feeling even more uncomfortable. And then our head chimes in and it starts, trying to figure it out and trying to figure out what's really going on and why we feel this way and what way we should really feel and what we should do instead. And, how we can morph ourselves into, just ignoring that uncomfortability and fitting in. And so back to the yoga class, this was kind of the way I felt for just, maybe a minute. And I zoomed out and I took a scope of the rest of the beings in the class, in the room, as we were getting ready. It wasn't even started yet. And knowing that not everyone is a representative of that second grader in the room, not everyone was making me feel uncomfortable. It was just, that was the particular person or group of people or level that I was focusing on, because it was making me the most uncomfortable. It was the most noticeable. And when we are uncomfortable, we do anything we can to get out of the discomfort, right? And usually our mind takes over, and our head and our computer brain that's trying to access all the old recordings and all the old situations and traumas and reasons and knowledge and database that it's ever compiled over our entire lifetime to give us feedback on what this really means and what we should do. But the problem with relying on the mind for that is the mind and the brain can only spit out what it has experienced before. It cannot generate organically from a zero space, from an organic restart space, from an organic presence space. Like, here I am, brand new. What can I gather and feel and know on a spiritual, organic, authentic, pure frequency space, source space, energy that will enable me to be my authentic self without being, paying attention to or finding myself drawn to focus on these aspects of the room or the group or the conversation that don't feel comfortable. Our mind doesn't have that ability. What has that ability is our body, is our heart in particular. And so I went into the space of, what is my heart? What can I be in my heart right now? Can I be in my heart all the way right now? Can I be in this space of love right now? And in that moment, at first, when I first went to the heart, I immediately thought of, people saying, love yourself, be in the space where you love yourself and tell yourself that you love yourself. But there again, the problem with telling yourself things and making these statements like, I love myself, is your brain taking over, is your mind taking over with words and with to-dos and behaviors. You're not really being in the space of your heart and your love when you're telling yourself, I love myself. You're being in the statement of the words. You're being in a new program. You're being in the mind telling you what to do and what to say and how to get somewhere. So, this all took place in like 5 seconds. I'm expanding it because I want to explain it all. But, I went out of that, awareness into just being the love. And that's hard because those of us who have felt like we haven't fit in, like we haven't belonged, like we've been ostracized, like we've been misunderstood, we've been locked out of the gates, we've been kicked out, we've been betrayed, we've been abandoned, whatever, all of it, all of the above, whatever. Our heart has wounds, our heart is sensitive. It is the most pure, straight shooting energy to God and source and all that is. But if it has been through experiences that, like I just mentioned, it's not going to easily want to open and hold space for you to be in it unless you trust. And there's a book that I read about a year ago, or year and a half ago, maybe, called Love Beyond. Oh gosh, what was the name of it? By Glenda. Love Without End. Maybe that's it. Love Without End, Jesus Speaks. And it's about this famous artist, portrait artist who painted Jesus with a lamb, and her experience of being visited by him, his spirit, for like 3.5 months or so, and the conversations that they had and the truth that he spoke to her and that he helped her understand things. And one of the key elements of what he shared with her and what he taught with her is something that I've been living by over the last year and a half, which is an aspect called the adamantine particles. The adamantine particles are the smallest irreducible aspect of matter, smaller than atoms. They make up all that is. But the adamantine particles are also the particles of energy that are responsible for us manifesting what we want, what we see, what we have, what we experience in our life. But they don't just arbitrarily create or manifest. They are driven by the authority of love, the energy of love. And Jesus in this book talks about the Trinity, but not in the way that if you're a Christian or a Catholic or, other religions have been raised to believe in the Trinity. The Trinity that he speaks about is this, triangle or pyramid shaped energy building block. At the top of this triangle or this pyramid is love. And at the left-hand corner on the bottom is the adamantine particles. And at the right-hand corner on the bottom is spirit, God. So I thought about that when I was, I didn't just think about it, but I thought it, and then I felt myself into how can I be in the energy of love and adamantine particles so I can emanate not only this from myself, but so I can emanate it outwards, basically, so I can emanate the light that I am outward from me into my environment, into the room. And so I just let go of, all thoughts of who was in the room and what energy they were carrying and what the feeling was like of not fitting in and, all the sensitive feelings that I felt when I sat down and noticed the emotions and thoughts of the other people in the room. All that went away and I just became tuned into just me. And then all of that went away. And I think the reason I'm saying this today and that I'm coming on here is we have been taught, conditioned, modeled, told, programmed, indoctrinated, all the words, that it's important to be a part of a community or to fit in to a family, to a community, to a class, to the world, to political affiliation. I mean, it doesn't stop. We have been raised, indoctrinated through ancestral lineage to fit in. And we are not meant to fit in. We are not meant to fit in. Because we don't fit in. There is no fit in box. Each human that ever lived, whoever will live, is divinely designed with unique and specific, customized gifts, talents, thoughts, behaviors, abilities that start when you're a soul and you decide that you want to incarnate into this human earthly plane because you want to help humanity, because you want to expand consciousness, because you want to experience a part of being the light and of being love and of being an extension of source, God, all that is. And you want to experience that through the tactile sentience senses that only exist in this human form. They don't exist in spirit form. You desired to experience a certain theme, a certain way of being, even maybe a certain form of personality self that you create by coming into the incarnated version of spirit into a human body. And you are here to shine. You are here to authentically be a sovereign being. Remembering along the way that you came from God, spirit, spiritual realm for a purpose, an experience, a desire. You never came here to fit in. Stop trying to fit in. It's always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to be painful. You're always going to be disappointed. You're always going to be shut out of the gates, ostracized, left out, misunderstood, hurt. It's time to understand this. So here's the solution. Many solutions, but here's one solution. If you enter a space, a room, a conversation, a family, a culture, an activity, a community, wherever, an office, a relationship, and it feels icky. Icky meaning it could be a million things. It could be extremely uncomfortable. It could be painful. It could be that you want to just hide. It could be that you don't feel good enough. All of these things. That's your sign. You're not in a space that is aligned with your high frequency. So go. Leave. Leave that space. Leave that room. Leave that class. I mean, unless you can get to that state where I was talking about in earlier, that you can, ignore all the mind chatter and be in the heart and embody your true, authentic soul spirit, where you no longer are uncomfortable. Unless you can do that, you haven't been skilled enough or mastered the ability yet to be there. So trying to force yourself to be in a place where you feel like you don't fit in and it's very uncomfortable is only pushing your frequency down lower and lower and lower. And the more we push our frequency down, the more we attract situations, people, circumstances, relationships, energies that are at that low frequency. You notice the more you push yourself into trying to be understood by someone who is in second grade when you're in sixth grade, as soon as you finally leave the conversation, 5 times out of 10, something else will happen to you that also doesn't feel good. because you have been lingering in that lower frequency, that lower grade. This is the time to give yourself permission for the realization that you're feeling uncomfortable is a sign, it's a directive, it's a guidance, it's an indicator. We're not here to push and do and mold ourselves and fit in the box and effort and just keep trying. You notice when you do that, you either start eventually feeling angry, or you feel sad, or you feel depressed, or you feel in pain. This is not what happens when you listen to the high frequency feelings that reflect themselves in the space that you enter. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. You are not here to fit in. Mm-mm. I'm going to be doing a gathering. I might do it in person or online on Zoom, or maybe both. It's kind of a segment of what I'm talking about in this video, but it's different also. It's a stage called the Sophia Stage. Carl Jung had many, many patients who he worked with over the years during his lifetime, and this is a phase of evolution that he discovered in the people he worked with, and it's rare. It's not common, but it helps describe and explain a lot of the changes that some of us are going through, and why we are feeling like we don't fit in anymore, and why things feel so different. We find ourselves going into a new space, a new state of being that's not familiar to us, that people don't really talk about. And I'm going to be hosting an informative, interactive online and in-person group. So if this interests you, if you want to look it up, look up the Sophia Stage. We're going to be really working with those of you who feel drawn to this, to seeing if this is where you're at right now, or if this is where you're entering, and the truth of it, and how it's here in your being, in your frequency, in your state, because it's supposed to be here. Yeah. So if you're interested, drop me a message. All my info's in the description box below. Thank you for listening. Be you.